All right. Shalom, Akim, times a lesson. I do want to give all praise and all glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Hakodash. Double honors to our apostles and out of the great millstone that taught us the truth. Peace and blessings to the sincere Akim that's pushing the truth. In all truth and sincerity around the four corners of the earth, diligently to us, Shalom. And this is Brother Yara Ariyah from the Great Millstone Miami camp. And come back to the spirit power of Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai. Slakia. Come back to the spirit power of Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai. Okay, to make another lesson. Okay, and this lesson is that the title lesson is going to be titled, okay, you other nations are not going to go unpunished. Okay, these other nations that, are ruling the earth with America, um, y'all not going unpunished, man. Lord, has seen all the wickedness that you have done to the nation of Israel. Okay, the Lord didn't forget nothing that, these other nations done did to us too. All right, and how they benefited. It's like, these other nations, they not gonna just go off in the sunset and just get unpunished, man. These other nations are going to have to get, punished for, what they did to the nation of Israel, man. And I was going over Revelation 11 and verse 8 earlier with the brother, Jeremiah. Okay, and because these other nations knew ultimately who we were. Okay, yes, Esau did play a part in, not telling us who we were, but these other nations knew who we were, man. And they still dealt with us the way they did, man. Okay, and y'all gonna have a price to pay for that because, the Lord is just not gonna let y'all just go off in the sunset and just think that y'all gonna be the next global superpower. No, man. Okay, y'all gonna have to get judged for that, man. All right, and we don't want any type of reparations or any type of things. These worldly things for payment. No, man. We're gonna want y'all in captivity, man. Okay, but this is starting off in Revelation chapter 11, verse 8, and it says, "And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city." And that's right, man. And when that precept talks about that, those dead bodies. Okay, who's that talking about, man? That's talking about the dead bodies of, the nation of Israel, going to how we were in a dead state of mind, man. Because guess why? Our heritage was stripped from us, man. That's when Jake, was in captivity, man. Okay, those 350 years, which it speaks about that, in the next verses, man. Okay, in that great city going into America, Babylon, man. Okay, Jake was in the dead state of mind. Okay, we didn't know who we were. Okay, Esau just had us in captivity. Okay, and we were just going through that harsh captivity, man, not knowing who we were. Okay, Esau was just being the devil that he is. Twisting and turning the scriptures, man, adding what he want. Okay, in the scripture, so that it's because to show how this devil going to use it against him, use it against us, man. All right, and continuing on, it says, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt. Okay, and why is it called Sodom and Egypt? Okay, because all the things that they practice here go back to Egypt, man, as well as all of the sodomy that goes on in America. Okay, all the wickedness that happens, all those things go back to Egypt, man, and Sodom. All right, I understand that scriptures say that nothing new under the sun. All right, so all these things that are happening now, or happened before, but just now are just waxing worse. Okay, and it says where our Lord was crucified, and that's right, where Yahweh Shai was crucified, meaning, when they exalt Yahweh Shai. Okay, when they did what? Going into Job. Let me see, Job 9:24, man. He covered the face of the judge thereof, man. Let's see. Let's give it to him. I'm covered. Pretty sure. That's Judges. This is Job 9 and verse 24. And it says, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not who, if not where, then who is he? Right? And that's going into Esau Edom, man. Esau went and covered the face of the judges thereof, covered the faces of Yahushai, went and changed the image of Yahushai to what? To spread a false doctrine. Okay, that's where he comes with that, with that Christianity bullshit, man. Okay, and how did he do that? Starting off with slavery, man. Okay, because once you can manipulate, that power. Okay, that's how you can control the people, because once you start putting all these judges and all these people to look like you are programming in those people's mind that doesn't know any better that you are superior and and they are inferior, man. Okay, that's what that happens, man. Esau played a psychological game against our people. So that's why the scriptures say the scriptures say that the devil was wiser than Daniel. Okay, he knew what he was doing when he did that. All right, verse 9, and it says, and they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them. Let's lock it. Verse 9 it says, and they of the people of the kindreds and the tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half. And that's right, man. These other nations seen us going into captivity, man. Okay, and those 3 days and a half going into 350 years where Jake was in hardcore bondage, man. From 1619 to 1969, man. Jake was in hardcore bondage, man. Okay, and it says, and shall not suffer their dead body to be put in graves. That's right, man, because these other nations didn't tell us who he was, man. Okay, because scriptures, when you think of the grave, what do people say? Rest in peace. Okay, so they didn't give us peace by telling us who we were, man. Okay, they just benefited off of slavery, man. And it says, and they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them and make merry and shall send gifts to one another. And that's right, man, speaking upon those heathens, man. Okay, and send gifts to one another. That that's going to how Jake was being sold as merchandise, man. And it says that in Joel 3, sold, they sold a boy for wine and a harlot. Let me see if I can find that. Let me see. This is Joel 3 and verse 3. Joel 3 and verse 3, and it says, and they have cast lots for my people and have given a boy for a harlot and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. That's right, man. They done, these other nations and Esau Edom done sold, our people for because they treated us as merchandise, man. All right, they was viewing us as property. Okay, on those auction blocks. All right. In verse 10 it says, and they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice upon them and make merry and shall send gifts to one another, because these two prophets tormented them that dwell upon the earth. Right, and those two prophets are going to northern kingdom and southern kingdom, man. All right, because these other nations knew who we were, man. All right, and it says, and after 3 days and a half, the spirit of life from the Most High entered unto them. And that's right, man. After those 350 years, from 69 to 1969, guess what came out? The spirit of truth started coming out. Okay, starting with Elder Abba Bivin. That's where the spirit of truth started coming out, man. That's when Jake started to wake up. And they that stood upon their feet and great fear fell upon them which saw them. And right, man, these other nations started getting frightened once Jake started waking up, and it was all part of prophecy, man. Okay, it was all part of prophecy for us to wake up, man. Here just talk about in the land of our captivity they shall remember themselves. All right, so it was already prophesied for us to wake up. All right, and come back and seek the Lord, man. And I got one more piece of this, Jeremiah 50 and 11. It says, because you were glad, because you rejoiced o'er the storage of my heritage, because ye are grown fat as a heifer, as grass, and bellows and bulls. Since your mother shall be sore confounded, she that bare you shall be ashamed. Behold, the hindermost of the nation shall be as a wilderness, a dry land and desert. That's right, man. Because these other nations were glad, and Esau was glad. Because they're the one that destroyed our heritage, man. All right, they were glad of that, man. Because guess what? They were earning, they were earning money off of, money off of Jake, man. All right. And it says, your mother shall be sure confined going into Great Britain. Okay, because America came out of Great Britain. All right, because you understand that, because Jeremiah 50 going into the destruction of America, and that's what that's what's going to happen to you nations and Babylon. That started with America. Okay, y'all gonna be destroyed. All right, and these other nations, y'all have a price to pay for. Y'all thinking that y'all gonna get off just scot-free. Y'all thinking that nothing's gonna happen to y'all, man, and that's not true. Okay, y'all know who we was, and y'all didn't tell us. Okay, because guess what? It was benefiting y'all. All right, because slave labor benefited the whole world, man. Okay, because scriptures prophesy that Jacob gonna be scattered around all the earth, man. Okay, but they outcome, that's lesson. Okay, lower than lessons edifying here. That I doing to give all praise and honor glory to Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai by Hashem Kakodash. They're born to star apostles and elder of great milton that taught us the truth. Peace and blessing to the sincere Akims. With that, I do want to say shalom.